Let's talk about reviving the settlement house movement in Utica, New York. For over 100 years, my hometown of Utica has been a beacon for immigrants from around the world seeking a better life. Amazingly, this trait continues even as much of our nation has grown wary of accepting refugees. However, Utica, a proverbial Rust Belt city, has been beset with economic and structural problems which have stymied its ability to absorb its newly arrived refugees. Here are the problems that stand in the way as I see them. 1. Population loss. Since I was a child in the 1960s, Utica's population has plummeted from 100,000 to 62,000, caused in no small part by the demise of manufacturing. 2. A burgeoning population of immigrants. 17.6% of Uticans are now foreign-born. 3. A shockingly high poverty rate, which at 29.6% is more than double the national average. 4. A flight of the middle class to the suburbs, which, as the Sierra Club has observed, has resulted in sprawl without growth in Utica. How do we address these problems? I've been thinking that a revival of the settlement house movement could spark an urban renaissance in our city, and I'm drawn to history as a guide, for I know that Utica has absorbed large waves of immigrants, and that the settlement house movement was instrumental in that effort. Born in Victorian England and peaking in the U.S. in the 1920s, the settlement movement was a social reform effort to get the rich and poor in society to live more closely together in an interdependent community. Its main object was the establishment of settlement houses, in which volunteer middle-class settlement workers would live, helping to alleviate poverty. It eventually grew to nearly 500 settlement houses nationwide, including most prominently Hull House in Chicago, which is still operational. And there was a settlement house in Utica as well, the Italian Settlement House, located in East Utica and founded in 1912. Today, it is no longer a settlement house, but continues to function as a neighborhood child care center. Settlement houses contributed mightily to the assimilation of vast numbers of immigrants in the United States in the early 20th century and the late 19th century. But what happened to them? Hull House in Chicago notwithstanding, many evolved into community centers, like for instance the one in Utica, and many, dare I say most, simply vanished. How is Utica coping with the wave of refugees who have been arriving here from around the world in recent years? We can look with admiration about how my old school, St. Francis de Sales, has been repurposed as a center for refugees and see success in that effort as it has become a critical community resource. But we need to do more. What happened in Utica in the post-World War II era happened in many, far too many cities across America. The government built highways. Utica's arterial comes to mind, which made it easy and convenient for the rich and middle class to move out of the city. In addition, suburban housing tracts were financed by redlining federal FHA and GI mortgage programs, which tended to exclude much of the urban minority populace, resulting in de facto segregation. How can we get the middle class to return to our city? Fortunately for Utica, with the prospect of hundreds of high-paying jobs envisaged by Nano Utica, the spark of economic revival is nigh. But unless we rekindle the settlement movement, any prospective wave of prosperity will fail to reach those in our midst who need it the most. Utica should appeal to the millennials who, as John Zogby observed in a recent TEDx Utica talk, think globally, progressively, are environmentally conscious, and are drawn to social activism. I see them drawn to Utica, where housing is affordable and life is cheaper and easier without a car. How can we make this happen? To build a better Utica for all, we do not need a large facility like Hull House. Rather, what we need is to encourage the creation of hundreds of settlement houses of middle-class people whose presence in this city will help to foster the revival. What besides affordable housing will attract them to come here? We are a compact and bike-friendly city and have one of the finest municipal park systems in the United States, as well as a zoo. We have loads of cultural amenities, the Aud for sport and entertainment, the Stanley Theater for cultural events, a magnificent library, as well as one of the finest art museums in the world. But most importantly, we have our children who have every promise of prospering and thriving. But if they are to achieve their full potential, we need to change the zeitgeist by looking upon our family houses as settlement houses that can be networked and deployed to help them. If, dare I say, when we accomplish this lofty goal, we will serve as an example to other communities across this nation as to what can be achieved, and thereby help to make America great again. Let's begin.